Another one from Mafia. What is going to stop a massive correction like the GFC repeating here again in Australia and bringing house prices crashing down? So I guess the big one there, Mafia, is firstly, again, kind of themes back into these previous questions. We've got to have uh, oversupply. And the other thing, which kind of, I guess, ties into what we do as a business in terms of the types of properties we purchase, you've got what's known as base asset replacement cost. So, if your home burns down, if your home's worth $500,000 and it's going to cost you 400, 600, $700,000 to rebuild that home, there's not a whole lot of risk associated with buying that lower price property. Now, if you're buying properties and they're all $3, $4, $5 million and all around you is vacant land, and somebody could come in there and purchase that and potentially subdevelop it and then build homes at a relatively cheap price. But what we actually have at the moment is still insanely high rising construction costs. I'd love to look in the more minute data behind this apartment. So I do have a bit of a gut feeling the reason there's a bit more of a rise in the apartments as a percentage than the standard residentials or townhouses is because a lot of these developers are starting to realize their cookie cutter apartments are no longer seen as good investments, even from overseas foreign investment, and they're now going toward more of a high end build to try and attract people in, and that's what's going to differentiate your build. News alert, it definitely won't. But we can see there's been a sharp rising cost in the construction. So for me, if we were to see housing price correction here in Australia, we would need a lot of things to happen. We would firstly need to see a massive oversupply of property coming into the market. And where we're at right now, being at around about a 1% vacancy rate, we're talking the best part of a decade of huge amounts of new builds going through, which that would in turn require the labor or workforce behind it to actually support it, which also we don't have. And then the other thing is as well, we would, I guess it could go another way, but we would then also need to see a dramatic decrease in building costs. So unless you can get labor for cheap, or you have a surplus of labor, or you can just bash these homes out a lot quicker, the risk there of a big housing price correction just off the back of a GFC, and I think that GFC thing is very overstated. If we compare what happened to here in Australia in that period of time, the housing market corrected about 7%, and the next 10 years after that, basically all across the board, housing prices doubled. So we had a little blip of a radar for a period of time, and we did have a little bit of an oversupply. It was absolutely exacerbated in places like the US, and again, different reason. I think they corrected about 17%, but their vacancy rate was around 5, 6, 7%. It's a lot easier for them to get cheaper building because they have I guess, lack of a better word, they have a illegal migrant problem at times, and they can come over and get work done cheaper, a lot less red tape to go through than here in Australia, not as unionized as well. So yeah, it's something that we're quite lucky. We're isolated. We've got our own unique environment, and we'd also need population growth to really slow down. So I don't see that happening anytime soon in the near future. If anything, we actually need to see house prices increase and might hurt some people listening that are trying to buy a home to live in, but we actually do need to see house prices increase, because without house prices increasing as it sits right now, there are quite a number of places across Australia where subdivision development, all those kind of things which stimulate jobs, they create housing, there's no profit to be made, because if they're going to buy $1 million property and it's going to cost, and these costs are really conservative numbers. When you put in site costs and then how the home actually finishes, I think when you speak to some of the cookie cutter builders like your Metricons and your large builders, Carlisle Homes down here in Victoria, I'm sure there's bigger ones in the other states, but they're close to that 600, 550,000 number, right? So if it's not really possible for those developers to buy those sites where they split one into two and actually turn a profit on them because They spend or if they do a knockdown rebuild and they might spend $1.2 million on the build, then they've spent $1 million purchasing the site. But if they're only really able to sell both of those dwellings together for less than $1 million or $1 million, they've lost money. So we actually do need construction costs to stabilize a little bit and house prices to rise to actually give that construction industry a bit of a shot in the arm, because as it sits right now, private equity doesn't want to put any money into construction. You've got high interest rates, long turnaround times on builds. It just doesn't make sense to them to be parking their money there. So we do need house prices to actually increase. And again, the cost of construction is a big one, and it's why I don't see prices of property slowing down anytime soon. But thanks for flicking that one through.